Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how I painted these leaves wet and wet using a variety of greens. So let's get started. So I did a simple leaf sketch here on my paper, and this is Saunders Waterford cold press paper on a block. Now, before I got an idea of exactly which colors I'm going to use on this, I made a little experimentation chart, and I recommend you do something like this. I basically just made a whole bunch of different combinations of my greens and yellows and blues, and just kind of did a little bit of experimenting. I even have some off green colors. I used a little burnt sienna on this one. A little burnt sienna here, a little bit of perylene violet with green gold that really kind of neutralized it. So above each little swatch, I sketched out the names of the colors that I used to make that mix. So this is a great place to start when you don't know which greens that you want to use. So just based on this list, I decided to use indigo for a dark, green gold for a nice bright yellowy green color, sap green, which is just a really good all-around natural green color that mixes well with a lot of other colors, and undersea green, which you can see in this swatch right here. It's a really pretty color, and also it has granulation properties. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you're deciding on which greens you want to use. You could just use all transparents and make it look very glass-like, but if you want to have a little bit of texture, a little bit more natural texture, then I recommend incorporating a granulating color, and undersea green is a really nice color for that. Some other options are cobalts, so you have some cobalt teal here, cobalt turquoise, green apatite, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. That's also another really nice granulating color, but undersea green is my newest pigment in my arsenal, and I want to play with it. So let's get started. So I have the colors written out here. I'm just going to add a few to my plate here from my palettes. I'm just going to start . And this is a palette, each of these are palettes that I put together myself. They came in these really nice little tins. It came with the trays that are just magnetic on the bottom. And that way I could just choose whatever colors I liked. Just about all of these are Daniel Smith and a few Winsor Newton, and I have one Qor, Q-O-R color. And this is my other tin. So I just kind of have them separated in the yellows and greens and blues here, and then the pinks and purples here, which we won't be using a lot of those this time around. But anyway, so that's introduction to the palette that I've been using for, I set it up a few weeks ago, and I'm actually really liking it. So once I squeeze them out, just about 20 minutes or so before a painting session, I just give them a spray with my spray bottle, let them loosen up a little bit so that I can move them onto my mixing area. So I don't think I need much more indigo than that. It's a very strong color. So the next one on my list is green gold. It looks like I'm going to need to refill this pretty soon. I might just get a little of the tube. there. Add a little bit more to my palette as well for next time. Next on my list is sap green. And by the way, don't use a good brush for all this lifting of pigment. I'm being a little bit rough, but this is one of my older brushes and I used the heck out of it, so all of the bristles are already not best for applying on the paper, but it's great for doing things that are a little bit more rough. Okay, and the last one is this beautiful undersea green. Right now I am ready to get started. I do want to say this is an abbreviated version of this painting that I did a while back. I put the question out to my audience if they'd like to see, if you would like to see how I made it. So I'm doing this one, which is gonna, it's not as elaborate, but it'll demonstrate the technique and the process. But if you would like to have the outline line art for this more complex version and the simpler leaf version, you can just go to my website at createwithora.com/free, and it will give you access to my line art gallery, which has line art for lots of my different YouTube videos, so you can print them out, trace them, and follow along if you like. All right, I'm just gonna go get some fresh water and I'll be right back. Okay, we got fresh water and we're ready to start painting. So for each leaf, I do wet and wet, and I also do a little bit of charging, which is dropping one color onto another to just create it just creates a really unique look and texture, and it's it's easier to explain when you see it on the paper. So I have my large brush here, and I'm just going to paint. I'm going to paint one leaf at a time, but I'm going to wet the paper for 2 leaves. So I'm filling it in, not quite to the outline. I'm leaving a tiny little gap so that I can make sure that I have a nice hard edge on that dry paper, and then let the color flow into the wet paper inside that leaf shape. I'm just making sure I have it all even. All right, so let's start with green gold at the top here. Now the paper is very wet, so you don't want your paint to also be super wet. This is a fairly thick consistency. I'm just going to start at the top. Green gold is a very, very nice transparent color. So I'm not going to paint all the way down. I'll stop there, even though it's traveling, because of the water. And then on this leaf, I'll use it and start at the bottom. I want to have a little bit of consistency, repeating colors throughout the leaf so it all looks cohesive. Okay, if you're using a really good quality 100% cotton paper, which I highly recommend, then your paper's going to stay wet for a decent amount of time. So you don't have to rush to put in the extra colors. Let's see, okay, for this top leaf, let's go with a little bit of that undersea green. Now here I'm going to start at the bottom. I think this paper is probably just a little bit too wet, but that's okay. I can come back after it's dried a bit and add a little bit more color. Get right to that edge. Now for this one, I don't want to use the same undersea green. I'll use some sap green. I'm kind of charging it into that green gold so that it's a smooth transition. Well, not smooth, but just so it doesn't look half and half. There's a little bit of variation of color throughout the leaf there. Same with here, I need to ensure that blends a little bit better. So we'll wait for this to dry a bit. And then I'll add a little bit more of that color there. Let's go ahead and start on this leaf. Let's carefully use a little bit of that indigo. It's a really strong color, so I don't want it to be too intense. Maybe the corner or one edge and the other edge. And I'll fill this one in with some undersea green here. And maybe a little green gold on this side. Rinsing and blotting my brush, I'm going to go right back into that pure green gold and touch that into the indigo. So I don't really want it to look like a blue leaf. I'm going to go back up to these leaves here. Back to my undersea green. Now that the paper's dried a little bit, I can get a deeper concentration of color. I'm just dropping some pure water, getting some texture. I already like how that one's turning out a lot. All right, let's do this leaf. Maybe some indigo and sap green for this one. Rinse. Get the excess water off your brush. Now charging some of that sap green into that indigo. Like a nice dark green. Let's do sap green and undersea green here. Let's do a little water drop into here. Okay, let's go back to our green gold. Let's do some green gold and indigo. I'll do the green gold first, and then I'll drop the indigo on after this time. It's pretty intense, so I'm gonna rinse, blot, get some more green gold on my brush, and just kind of push that around a little bit. we can add a touch of undersea green there as well, just for some texture. Let's go back to our green gold for this last leaf. Actually, let's do sap green. We haven't done as many sap green colors here. Now, this leaf is very wet, so that's also going to affect the look of your leaf, depending on how much water you have on the paper. I just recommend that you play around and see what you like. The drier the paper, you have a little bit more control over where the pigment goes. The wetter it is, the more likely it's going to spread, depending on the pigment and how transparent or granulating it is, because granulating pigments do tend to not travel as much. Let's see, let's do a little indigo. Let's do a few drops here before it's all dry. A little texture. And on this one. Alright, last but not least is the stem. So let's just go with our sap green. I'm going to add some texture to the stem as well. So while it's still wet, I'm just going to dip my brush in the water, add a few water drops. Let's add some darks and make sure those leaves are connected. I really like the different textures that I'm seeing here, different color variations, and it all looks very organic and interesting because it's not all the same color. So I really encourage you to try something like this. make your own chart of different combinations of greens. It's also a really fun and relaxing way to either unwind at the end of the day, just making these because you don't really have to think too hard. Really good way for warming up before a painting session, and you can make these for lots of different colors as well, and keep them in a binder so you can get some color inspiration for any future paintings as you need them. But that is it for this demonstration. I really hoped you enjoyed following along. If you really got value from this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want some more watercolor and other art tips and tutorials. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.